Hi. Thanksgiving had always been our thing. Even before we got married, before her family started calling me part of the furniture, and mine started bringing her pumpkin bread to every function. Even then, it was always our holiday. No gifts to buy. No decorations beyond a wreath or two. Just food, warmth, and people packed into a too-small house with folding chairs and pie for breakfast the next morning. This year, it was at her sister's place. Big white house in Connecticut, granite countertops, open floor plan that somehow echoed even when full of people. Her sister, Rachel, was one of those women who always looked like she had a team behind her, even in sweatpants. Her husband, Graham, well, he was the type who laughed like he wanted you to hear it from the next room. I remember driving up with Nora, my wife, and watching her lean against the window like she used to when we were dating. Except this time, she wasn't humming to the music or holding my hand on the gear shift. She was texting, quiet, her thumbs moving fast. Work? I asked, half hopeful. Yeah, she said, not looking up. Just closing out some stuff before the long weekend. I nodded, tried not to read into it. You spend enough time with someone, you learn how to translate silences. Hers had shifted lately, from soft and thoughtful to clipped and occupied. I told myself it was the season. Everyone was tired. Everyone was busy. But something in me already knew. The dinner itself was loud and warm. Kids running under the table, too many pies for the counter, football humming in the background. I helped Rachel with the carving, and Nora handed out wine glasses like she owned the room. She always had a presence, Nora. That effortless kind that made people lean in just to hear her tell a story about waiting in line at the DMV. There was a moment, just before dessert, when we all settled into that post-turkey lull. Candles flickering, plates half empty. Graham made a joke about the first time he met Rachel's ex-boyfriend. Something about how the guy looked like a hedge fund vampire who'd never seen sunlight. People laughed. Then Nora jumped in with her own joke. He probably thought Rachel would fund his next startup, she said, grinning. Honestly, I wouldn't blame him. Rachel's taste in men is about as solid as her potato gratin. Everyone erupted. Even Rachel laughed, playfully smacking Nora's arm. Then God help me, I tried to join in. I made a dumb little quip. Something about how I must have been the exception, since I passed Rachel's screening and married into the family. The room paused. A polite smile here, a chuckle there, but mostly silence. Then Graham added a follow-up. Something about how we all have blind spots, and Nora threw her head back and laughed. Really laughed. Full-bodied. Head tilted. The kind of laugh she used to save for just me. I watched her hand rest lightly on Graham's forearm as she steadied herself, wiping tears from the corners of her eyes. I felt the room tilt. Not visibly. Not to them. But to me, it shifted on its axis. The air went thin. I smiled like it didn't matter. I sipped my wine. Laughed along like I wasn't hollowed out in an instant. No one noticed. Not really. After dinner, the kids put on some impromptu talent show. I excused myself to the kitchen under the pretense of helping with dishes. Really, I just needed to breathe. Nora came in a few minutes later, her arms full of dessert plates. You okay? She asked, not quite meeting my eyes. Yeah, I lied. Just letting the food settle. She smiled. Tight, quick. Don't vanish. Rachel's making that apple crumble you love. And then she was gone. I stood at the sink long after the water turned cold, pretending to scrub a plate I'd already washed. My hands were shaking, but not from anger. It wasn't anger yet. It was something worse, recognition. That laugh, the way her eyes crinkled, the lean of her body toward someone else. It wasn't just about the joke. It was about familiarity, intimacy, and the realization that, somehow, I was no longer the person who made her laugh like that. That night, we slept in separate twin beds in the guest room. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between her breaths. They were steady, peaceful. She slept like someone without conflict. I packed the next morning before the sun rose. Quietly. One bag. No note. I didn't slam the door. I didn't send a dramatic text. I just slipped away, the same way her affection had. One moment, I was her husband. The next, I was just a man with a bag walking to his car before the world woke up. I didn't go far that first day. Drove south, through sleepy Connecticut towns where wreaths were already on doors and old men in flannel were hauling Christmas trees onto roofs. I ended up in a motel off I-95, one of those places that smelled like damp carpet and powdered coffee creamer. But it was quiet, anonymous, And that was enough. I sat on the bed, phone in hand, waiting for her to call. She didn't. Mid-afternoon, I texted Rachel. Just said, "Tell Nora I'm okay." No response. Not even read receipts. That told me more than any message could have. They'd circled the wagons. I'd become a story they didn't want interrupted. A loose thread better left untouched. I stared at the bag I'd packed. A pair of jeans, 2 button-downs, shaving kit, a half-read novel. I hadn't even remembered socks. I sat there barefoot, wondering what the hell I thought I was doing. Leaving without a fight. Without a word. But the truth is, it didn't feel like leaving. It felt like slipping out of a costume I didn't realize I'd been wearing. We'd been married almost 7 years. No kids. No real fights. Either, not the screaming kind, at least. But looking back, I wonder if that was the first warning. Real love is noisy. It stumbles. We'd become something clean. Curated. Like a catalog version of marriage. The kind that looks good on Instagram and feels empty in person. It wasn't always like that. There was a time, early on, when Nora would laugh at my dumb impressions in the kitchen. When we'd play music too loud and dance like idiots. When she'd fall asleep with her head on my chest during movie nights, mumbling jokes even as she drifted off. I think I started to notice the shift a year ago. Little things. Fewer texts during the day. More work trips she never used to take. Fewer smiles that reached her eyes. The first time I asked if everything was okay, she said, "Of course it is. You're just being in your head again." And I believed her. Because I wanted to. Because sometimes it's easier to swallow doubt than it is to digest truth. I stayed in that motel 3 days. Walked a lot. Sat in diners and drank too much coffee. Talked to no one. Kept imagining that Thanksgiving moment, over and over, like a glitch on repeat. The sound of her laugh, the warmth in it, how it bloomed for someone else. It wasn't jealousy. Not exactly. It was grief. Grief for the version of me who used to make her feel that way. On the 4th day, I got a call. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was there, brittle around the edges. "Hey, I noticed your bag was gone. Rachel said you texted. I don't really know what to say. You could have told me." Then silence. No apology. No panic. Just that strange, soft bewilderment. As if she couldn't quite grasp what had happened. Neither could I, honestly. That night, I opened the novel in my bag. A page was folded, something she used to do when she wanted me to read a passage. I found the line. Sometimes, leaving doesn't mean you're giving up. Sometimes, it means you've stopped pretending. I closed the book. That was it, wasn't it? I'd spent months pretending. Smiling through dinners where we barely touched. Nodding along while she talked about her co-workers like I wasn't in the room. I'd asked her how she was feeling, and she'd said fine, so many times it started to sound like a song with no melody. She never cheated, not as far as I knew. But in some ways, what happened was quieter. Harder to name. It was the slow departure of attention, the withholding of warmth. Like being left behind in the same room. The day after that call, I drove back to the city. Not to her. I rented a small 1-bedroom on a short-term lease. Bare walls, echoing floors, but it felt more honest than the place we shared. I unpacked my things. Hung one photo. Us on a beach, 3 years ago. We were laughing in it. Both of us. It felt like another life. A few hours later, she texted, "Are you really not coming back?" I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed, "Were you ever really here?" I didn't send it. Instead, I turned off my phone and sat on the floor, leaning against the bed frame, listening to the quiet hum of the radiator. I realized I didn't need to say anything yet. Or maybe ever. Some answers come in the silence. Weeks passed. She didn't call again. Not really. One more message. "We should talk," sent on a Sunday afternoon. I never replied. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I just didn't know what we'd talk about. We'd mastered the art of surface conversation years ago. Anything deeper felt like we were reading lines from a play we didn't believe in anymore. I moved through the days in a kind of stillness. The mornings were quiet. I started drinking tea instead of coffee. Picked up an old habit, sketching in the margins of a notebook, nothing serious. Just lines, shapes, sometimes a face I remembered from a dream. It felt good to make something that didn't need approval. Something that didn't have to be shared. The photo of us on the beach? I took it down a week after moving in. Not in anger. I just realized I wasn't that man anymore. The man in the photo was holding a woman who hadn't looked at him like that in a long time. It wasn't even the laughter that got to me. It was the way she was leaning in. The trust in that posture. The ease. I couldn't remember the last time she leaned into me like that. One night, I bumped into Graham at a hardware store. He was buying Christmas lights. Same loud laugh, same puffed chest. He looked surprised to see me. "Hey man, long time," he said, as if I hadn't vanished after Thanksgiving like a ghost. I nodded. "Yeah." There was a pause. He shifted his weight. "You and Nora, things okay?" I studied his face. Wondered if he knew. Wondered if he was the reason. Or just the symbol of a shift that had already happened. "We're figuring things out," I said. It was the last lie I'd tell about us. He clapped my shoulder. "Well, let me know if you want to grab a beer sometime." I nodded again, but we both knew we wouldn't. I left without buying what I came for. That night, I wrote a letter to her. Not to send, just to say the things I didn't trust my voice to hold. "Dear Nora, I don't hate you. That surprises even me. But I don't. I don't think I ever could. What I do feel is tired. Tired of trying to be enough in a room where I stopped being seen. Tired of wondering what version of me you wanted when I was already offering everything I had. Maybe that wasn't your fault. Maybe we both changed. But here's the part one can't let go. That laugh. You gave it to someone else, right in front of me, and you didn't even notice. It wasn't betrayal in the traditional sense. It was something softer, but no less cutting. It was watching you forget that I was once the reason you lit up like that. That I'm still here. Still trying. Or I was. I don't think you meant to hurt me. But you did. And I think you knew it, deep down. Maybe that's why you haven't really reached out. Maybe you're afraid of what I'd say. Or what you'd have to admit. Either way, I'm not angry. I'm just done pretending. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope whoever makes you laugh next, you actually notice who's not laughing with you. Be well. M. I folded the letter, tucked it in a drawer I never opened again. That was the moment I let go. She messaged again, weeks later, just a single sentence. "I miss you." And for the first time, I didn't feel the pull. I stared at the message like I was looking at a photo of a stranger. Not with bitterness. Just distance. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty. But because there was nothing left to say. Everything that mattered had already been unsaid. Thanksgiving came and went the next year. I spent it at a friend's cabin in Vermont. Just a few of us. Firewood. Whiskey. Laughter that came easy, not forced. I told a joke at dinner, something dumb, probably about the turkey, and they laughed. Not politely. Really laughed. It caught me off guard. And for a moment, I remembered that night, at her sister's house. How quiet the room had been after my joke. How her laughter for someone else felt like the final note in a song I didn't know had ended. But now, I smiled, took another sip, and let the warmth rise in my chest. Because the truth is, sometimes the person who makes you feel invisible is the one who was never really looking in the first place. And sometimes, the loudest goodbye doesn't come with slammed doors or shouting matches. It comes quietly, in the sound of your own footsteps. Leaving. For the last time. Bye-bye.